taking the morning fasted, even just 1 or 2 Goodphytes, felt like it lowered just the cost of admission from maybe a 5 out of 10 to maybe even a 3 or 4 out of 10 to just jog around and just get the miles done, even if I'm exhausted, even if I'm tired.
In this episode of the Reclaimed podcast, Goodphyte founder Amy Puzey interviews elite ultra runner Anthony Kunkel, who won the U.S. Track and Field National Championship in the 50-mile in 2017 and the 100K in 2018. Anthony's been taking Goodphyte for 3 years, and he tells Amy about his experience with it. And just a short time after this podcast was recorded, Anthony also won the Montana Spartan Ultra race, which was 30 miles long and had over 60 obstacles.
Good, guys. Just got done with the run.
Yeah.
Nothing out of the usual.
Ran in and your shirt's dry. Did you just change a t-shirt and sit down?
Definitely not. It's probably got wet spots on it, but 10% humidity out here helps.
Yeah, nice. Well, thanks for joining us on the Reclaimed podcast. We're really excited to hear about your experience with Goodphyte. You and I have talked quite a bit about it, but a lot of people haven't heard. And so let's go all the way back to the beginning. Tell us when you started using Goodphyte and what you noticed first. What do you think was the first thing that you noticed when you started?
Dang, it's probably been... What's it been, Amy? Your memory might be better than mine. 3 years? Every bit of it?
Yeah.
It's been a good stint. And the initial thing was there's another athlete in town that said, she was taking IV iron and couldn't keep her iron up. And it was just kind of you're filling the bucket as fast as you can. And there's just so many holes in it that it's just draining as fast as you can put in there. It's a sieve instead of a bucket. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because I had blood work right when you and I talked. I had blood work and my ferritin was in the normal range, but it was like 8 points above the low level of normal when, whatever unit we were using, it was like 100 to 600 or something. I know the Tour de Francers are critically high or even higher than that. So I was entertaining okay, this I can't just put more pressure on that system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I cook in cast iron. I eat organ meat. I do all the things, and I've even supplemented with iron in the past. So to see that my numbers were just barely in that normal range was on my radar. So when someone that I trust is like, you should just play with this stuff, I said, okay, cool. Just kind of blindly, it's an enzyme. It's not going to hurt anything. I had a few concerns. Is it gonna pull all the mucous membranes out of my gut like big dose enzymes can? And so I had probably what's the normal biohacker sort of concerns going into it. And then obviously my gut is bulletproof. I could eat my phone charger, my gut processes everything. Nothing. If I get the squirts, that's as bad as it gets. I don't get constipated. I don't get indigestion. I don't get heartburn. I am bulletproof end to end here. And so I was a little reserved as to what it could possibly do for me, but if it could just unlock some iron, maybe it's something that I would just trust the blood work on. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until I did the morning, I don't know how long it took me to, realize that you know what you're talking about, but to do first thing in the morning fasted was the way that really got my eyes onto it of, that was a good run. But maybe I have good runs all the time, whatever. But then to have day in, day out and have just slightly better runs in the morning was undeniable. And it was the only thing that I changed. I'm a total mad scientist with all this stuff. So while I'm a kid in a candy store and I love all the modern technology and everything we have, it's important to me that I make still water to see the ripples on it. It's important to me that I do that I don't add a bunch of things in there and then not know what to credit it for. This morning, Alyssa and I both had an awesome run, and we were saying it's a good thing we're on the same roads with the same mile splits and the same watch and the same shoes and the same everything, because recently we've both upped our dose, 4 or 5 caps in the morning, and are both having kind of inexplicably better days on that really high end aerobic. I don't know that anaerobic, the really, really hard stuff has changed. And I don't know that my steady state has changed, because that always feels good. So for me, it's 5:45 a mile feels the same. 5:15 a mile feels way better. 4:45 a mile used to be off the table because it crossed the line of anaerobic. And now it's my opening mile of my 4 miles at pace work, just to get to feel a little springy and sharp for the 50K next weekend, was a 4:46, 4:47. So moving. And then I went right into 540s, or it was actually like a 530 after that. I just couldn't slow myself down. And it's like that has extended what the high end aerobic pace is. It's bumped it down probably 15 seconds a mile for me. And that's something that you've seen it all in live, and I think people that follow me on social media have seen it live, but people that are just getting exposed to this right now, and me and like my whole process, I go on stuff and then I go off stuff and I go on stuff and I go off stuff. And when I go off of it, I take notes what I think might be happening, because I believe we're the pioneers, like we're the explorers, we're charting otherwise uncharted stuff right now. We're the first generation that's had access to everything, right? Like your parents, when they were your age, didn't have access to anything that is in the zeitgeist in like the biohacking space or the self-agency healthcare sort of space. Literally none of it, like wives' tales at best. And so I see it that way. And so I want to be very, if I'm going to tell someone, hey, this is worth your money or your time or your risk or all three of them, I want to know what they're supposed to be looking for. And I don't want to dupe myself into this, because it's all fine and good while I'm training. If I feel good, if I tell myself I feel good, then maybe I do. But when it comes to race day, at some point, I'm going to be 40 miles in, 60 miles in, 70 miles in, and all that academic stuff is going to go out the window. Does it actually make me feel better? Am I faster? Can I run with less effort? And it's going to be a binary answer, yes or no. And so that's kind of like, I guess it makes sense that it's long since it's more than a 3-year story, but that's like literally up to this morning with the first little bit as glossed over as I can make myself. But it was the energy with them fasted first thing in the morning, which didn't make any sense to me initially, because I was just thinking, okay, I take this with anti-nutrients, it undoes the anti-nutrients, and then it frees up like one thing, like just zinc, which then would affect copper and iron and everything downstream. And now I'm seeing some of the literature, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense with my subjective lived experience now, because I tend to think the athletes are 15 years ahead. I think the science is actually right even with me right now with this stuff. So I think that brings us up to today. It really is. It's a slight uplift in energy, and it's a slightly easier breathing, I guess it would have to be, because that's the limiting point, is when you really go from the point where it's like nice tempo run, 2 steps in, 2 steps out, 2 steps in, 2 steps out, to the like getting a little bit urgent. That has probably shifted, maybe 10 seconds a mile since doing really high dose stuff. And I think it's the similar effect of being a little less breathless to just go out on an easy run and not feel daunted by it. Especially here, I'm at altitude. Full disclosure, it's like I'm at altitude. You're hard pressed not to have 200 feet of change every single mile all week long. Like if you do a 100-mile week here, you're getting 10,000 feet of gain. It just is what it is. Like that's not getting on trails. That's not hiking. That's like it just happens passively.
Because what is the altitude where you live? You're in Durango.
Yeah, we're like 2,000 meters. We're 6,800 and some feet, like right here. And then trailheads are a little higher typically. And then the high country, you can get up to 10,000 feet pretty easily.
Yeah. And that, from having run races at that altitude, it's like breathing fire. So yeah, you're living there. And just for everybody that isn't a runner, when you talk about a 445 mile, there's a lot of people who can't run a 445 kilometer. We're in Canada here, so these speeds are insane. And you're talking, so when you say slight uplift in energy and slight increase in speed, so you say probably 10 to 15 seconds per mile faster without like massive extra effort, slight uplift in energy. Can you quantify that for us a little bit? Like percentage wise, what would you say? Like, say you're average, you're a 7 out of 10 normally. Are you up at a 9? Or from the time before you started Goodphyte in kind of your overall energy, what would you say the uplift is on a just 1 to 10 scale? I think it's
a little more slippery than that, because it's like 3 different variables to my mind, if I can put all these together post run brain. It's the high end aerobic stuff. It's the making, and I think that's what Alyssa's experience too. I know you guys just talked with her, of like it's making a 525 effort, which feels like I can do it for a long time, 525 a mile. It's making a 515 feel the same internally, like interoceptively. So we're looking at 10 seconds a mile of a bump with nothing else to allocate it to. I've lived on the same road with similar shoes, with similar routes for a long time, for a decade. And so there's really nothing else that I can attribute it to. And I'm 34 now, so it's not like I'm aging into this sport any longer. And so without the hardest number that I would have would be that the high end aerobic, like what you would think about as a really aggressive marathon pace, or maybe what most people would think of as about half marathon pace if they're pushing for PRs. That comfortably uncomfortable pace is where I've seen it's got to be about 10 seconds, if not 12, 15 seconds a mile, that it just perceptively feels the same as I go faster. Obviously, you still have to coordinate that and the mental aspect of it, but I think the aerobic aspect and just feeling my engine purr, it feels like I'm at the same RPM that I would have been at 5:25 a mile is now at 5:15, maybe even 5:10 a mile, which for me just happens to be not Olympic trial standard to Olympic trial standard in the marathon. And so that's a big swing for me. That could be the difference between, having a good crack at a good marathon season versus just always being like kind of a little bit less than elite in the marathon and better as it goes longer. So that's the one place that I've been really, really putting numbers to it and feeling it lately to as I've gone with a higher dose. That's what I've been up to lately. The initial sort of uplift was a little more ethereal because it was like mood. It's like vibes. It's like I just want to go run a little more. And why wouldn't I? What I found with all my tinkering is if I get rid of pain, if I get rid of distraction and discomfort, then I want to go train because like kids want to go run and I'm just a really, really fit kid in a perfect world. And so why wouldn't I want to go run? And that really is the right way to frame it. I think people want to try to, drink an extra cup of coffee so they do want to go run. And it's like, if I just take the brakes off and I just lower the fence, lower the cost of admission to go prance around, then I will. And why wouldn't I? And that's the sort of thing that initially got me in for subjective stuff with the Goodphyte, with the morning fasted protocol. And day in, day out, I'm not hammering. I'm like just going on easy runs. And so that feeling like it's a 5 out of 10 to just jog around as far as effort, and hopefully a 6 or 7 or 8 out of 10 for joy, and therefore it can just feed itself and I can just keep running around. That's the math that you want. And so to have just the cost of doing business, just the cost of jogging around emotionally, mentally, feel like it's a 4 or 5 out of 10 really is empowering. I mean, it's not just that it lets me train with less grit. I think you recover faster when you're less stressed to do it. And so it just makes this nice positive cycle of if you're absorbing things better, but you're also feeling so much better, it's not stressing you to do it. And so that's the kind of snowball that I think really got me into the game. It wasn't the high dose. It wasn't the seeing that I feel better high end aerobic. It was just the 5+ days a week, maybe 8-10 runs a week where I'm just going out and just jogging to get the miles in basically, or maybe some strides. And that's where it felt like it's taking the morning fasted, even just 1 or 2 Goodphytes, felt like it lowered just the cost of admission from maybe a 5 out of 10 to maybe even a 3 or 4 out of 10 to just jog around and just get the miles done, even if I'm exhausted, even if I'm tired.
And tell us about a couple questions. One is recovery. Do you feel like your recovery is better? And then also mental state. Do you feel like it has changed your energy at all? Like in terms of, you talked a little bit about that, but do you feel like there is obviously there's gut-brain connection. Do you feel like it's improved your mental state, your mood, sleep? Tell us about that.
I've played with enough different things to see that I don't really know that I can't, not just that I don't, that I can't possibly really know if something is helping recovery, or if it's making it easier to get out the door, or if it's making it easier to get the miles, or if it's making it easier to get the miles back out of my system. Because or at least my lived experience tells me that when it's easier to get done, it's easier to recover from, because it costs you less mentally. If I'm gritting my teeth, or those days where you're just staring at your shoes because there's 6 inches of fresh snow and you had pace work done and you're going to put on the screw shoes and you're going to get something out of it. You're going to salvage something, and it's going to be miserable, or it's going to be whatever. It's not what you planned for. Your training buddy bailed on you. It's like those days cost you more physiologically. And I don't know if anyone else has measured this, or if I've even seen this in my own data, but it's like you feel it. There's no doubt about it. And in the end of the day, you're not your heart rate variability, right? You're your mood to the extent that you're that. And so I think the recovery aspect comes in that it's easier to just get out the door. It's easier to get the miles done. It's those days. It's like the difference between having a solo run that's okay versus a solo run with a really good podcast in, or maybe even a solo run with a really good friend that always passes the miles like that those days where that really was the first. That's a fair comparison, I think. Is my first few months dabbling with Goodphyte, the first time I cycled on, cycled off, and cycled on again, the thing that I was noticing was that I don't know that I could point a finger and say this is better recovery, but what I would say is that it cost me less just to get out the door, to get the miles done, and therefore there was barely anything to recover from at that point, because it is kind of that sensation of like when you're catching up with a friend you haven't run with in 6 months and you always love running with, and you're like, oh my God, that was an hour gone like that. Like, we're going to go run for 3 hours. Who cares? Because you're just out there talking and catching up. So it does seem to be like it was, I would buy if you told me, hey, something new's in, it just affects your brain. Turns out it doesn't even touch your gut. It'd be like, okay, like you could sell me on that, because it has been kind of lowering the cost to just exist, lowering the cost to just get the slower miles in.
Yeah. And then do you feel like a lot of people feel like it's impacted their sleep because they're absorbing more magnesium throughout the day and then before bed? Do you feel like it's impacted your sleep at all, or does it help?
Interesting. I don't think it has. I think I would know, but it's also been a lot of cycling on, cycling off, and looking for other things. It would be interesting because I have fairly meticulous running logs. I could probably go in there and pull up, I have a decade worth of like Oura Ring and Ultra Human Ring data. I could probably go in there and try to sift some of that apart, but I don't know. I would imagine those stores kind of get beefed up when I'm on, and if they dwindle when I'm off. And then that's one of those disclosure things. It's like, I'm turning over things fast. I mean, I sauna every single morning. I'm living in a dry climate. I'm going through, 10 plus grams of sodium worth of Redmond salt on a good day. And so I am a mineralized person. I use diatomaceous earth for silica. I use sea moss. Like, I am an extremely intentional person with a lot of that stuff. I love shilajit. Like, I am a dirty mineralized human being. And so it's tough to know if that's something that would affect some people way more than it would me. I think I might already be tapped out in that realm.
Right. Can you tell us, so brag about yourself for a little while for people who don't know your running background. What's your fastest marathon, 50K, best performance? Give us a little history on your racing, your performance. What stands out as your best race ever?
I've gone 220 in the marathon, 220 some in the marathon. I don't know, a bunch of times, half dozen times, bunch of different conditions, minimal shoes. I did like a 235 or 238 or something in sandals one time. Not much for like novelty, but I'm not so sure that all these things help us. It's like, yeah, super shoes are great because they're fun, but like, I don't know if they're actually all that much faster. And same with like high carb fueling or even hydration. It's like my marathon PR 225, I think, low, was done on nothing. Like, it just didn't work out. So I didn't drink water. I didn't have salt. I didn't have anything. Like, it was no calories in the morning. Like, I don't know. I would rather default to 0 and then find out that I need something and then add that in and get to experience the perk of adding that in. And then for the rest of my life, I just know that it is actually helping. And so that's kind of I'm not like a minimal person, although I think people think that I am. It's just that I would rather default to 0 and then add things as I find that I need them. And if I never find that I need them, then maybe they never show back up and people think that I'm Mr. Minimal. But I've won 2 national championships through USATF. So if you compete internationally with Team USA on your chest, you're operating under USA Track and Field. That goes for mountain ultra trail stuff just as much as it does with the Olympic marathon team or the track or what have you. So I've won 2 national champs through there, resulting in a Team USA bid in 2018. Went to Croatia, had kind of a shit show at the World Champs in the 100K, mostly because it was kind of stressful and like the whole thing was very disillusioning in a good positive way. It was kind of the dream of a child, and then to get it and then realize that it's not fully supported. Like, it's a not pretty scene out there, and it's not a whole lot of team feels. And yeah, it was very disillusioning. And from there, I kind of went off into the deep end of like, okay, what else is there for me? If it wasn't this, and I thought this was going to take me the rest of my career to chase a world champs and whatever, then what do? I was kind of emotionally, spiritually, I guess professionally, even sort of homeless because I didn't really know what to do. And I'm not someone that has a compulsion to run. I kind of just do it because it's a celebration and I love it. I can and will give this up someday, and I'll occasionally go for a run. Like I don't need this. I'm a lot of people like to just kind of hum. The archetypal endurance athlete kind of just cruises at 60, right? Idles at 65. And that's not me. I'm a greyhound. Like I'll get up and do tricks and get zoomies, and then I'll sit back down and lay in my bed. That doesn't bother me. And so I knew there was something else other than just traveling around winning races. I mean, like I said, I'm 34 now. I had to have won a race or two when I was 14 or 15. So I've been winning races for 20 years at this point. And starting with 5K stuff, 10K stuff, I always knew I was better as it got longer. So like my national champs were in the 50 mile and the 100K. My Team USA slot was on the 100K world champs. That's under the IOC, International Olympic Committee. So that's like the tippy top. And for me to find that and have it be empty and hollow, it was a big so what now moment for me. And since then, I've done a pilgrimage a bunch of times across the Southwest to Holy Dirt in Chimayo, New Mexico. I've done some traveling. I've run in the Himalayas. And I've really questioned what I want to do with all this stuff. So where that's left me now is I've built an incredible aerobic base. I've had a really good history of not being hurt until I was like 30-ish or so. Call it my Saturn return. I think I'm okay with that at this point. And I had just pain I couldn't get rid of in my right leg. And that's part of how I'm so obsessed with mineralization and everything. Through predominantly fascial maneuvers, I have healed myself and kind of learned this language that I can then transmit from my body to someone else's body. And so I've been learning this thing that if I had to learn it to help other people, I would have never learned it. I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm not Gandhi. But because I had to learn it just for my own raw hedonic pleasure to run faster and run more free, now I've worked something that I don't think anyone could work that hard altruistically to help other people. But because I've refined that language so much in my own body, now I'm obsessed with this whole idea of free energy and fascial maneuvers and pumping fluid around things and really refining just the human system. You look into nature and you don't find suffering. And you look into humans and all you find is suffering. You find suffering at your work, and then you go to the gym and you suffer because you hate yourself at home, because you hate yourself because of whatever reason, and you don't have the thing and you wish you had this thing. And it's like there's all this like human rumination. And at this point in my running career, the only thing that's left for me to do is raw, crazy hedonic experiences. And I don't care what that looks like to anyone else. I would do it in a windowless box. So while I do want the 50-mile world record, I would rather have the experience of the 50-mile world record and have no one know about it than to get the world record and be on ketamine and not know that it happened, right? Like that's not even a starter for me. And so with my last few years, maybe I have 2 or 3 years, maybe I have 15 years left in this game. As you go longer and longer, you get a little older of a career. Things like crazy new peptides and gene therapies and all this crazy stuff that we have access to potentially, that might extend my career into my 50s even for all I know. So maybe I'll hit some sort of escape velocity. Right now, it's obstacle course racing, building up the hands, building up the pull-ups, getting ready to do grippy, pumpy obstacles and roll around in the dirt. I don't really like being dirty. I don't really like sand. So doing obstacle course racing is kind of fun for a prissy, fairly fast person. And the challenge really, as stated, was that it's world's toughest mudder. It's been covered when it's covered at all in other medias as it is tough. It lives up to the name. The world's fastest man is probably on a soccer pitch. The world's fastest sport is like Miley or one of those, right? Like we're the fastest moving thing. So is the 100-meter really the fastest man? It's like, is the strongest deadlifter really the strongest person? It's like, well, what kind of deadlift? Like, what about the strongest stone lifter? Isn't that guy stronger? Like, he can move a fridge better. And so there's all this debate. And when people have covered world's toughest mudder, they're like, the only way you get through that event, you win that event, is being world's toughest mudder. So like, I am determined to go there, and I am going to be the fittest 10 to 12-year-old you have ever seen in your life. And they have chosen this castle in a dirty landscape that has history and has had people die there and like battles and some dense human stuff. And they are building obstacles for me and 1,200 of my closest friends to come and play and put on a show and do something cool. And that's how I'm seeing this. And I really, really believe that I can use everything that I've learned and in my tissues and in my head, and all the biohacky stuff can all converge at this point where I can just be free. And if I'm free and I'm laughing and I'm playing and I'm loose, you can't possibly, it doesn't matter what obstacles you throw in the way or literally build to slow me down. it's going to be nothing but fun. And so that's what I have left in my career. And that's where I'm taking the world-class fitness and, like Mr. Team USA, like 100K national champion, like beating everybody to get an auto spot. And what I'm going to put that into is like playing on monkey bars and like rolling around in the dirt. And if you miss an obstacle, the penalties are sometimes physically taxing, but always kind of like humiliating and silly. And so it feels really good to be like an elite athlete and wear that costume into an arena where they're just screwing with you, really. Like, not to be like, too profane with it, but it's like they're just fucking with you. Like, they're intentionally trying to screw with you. And there's an opportunity for enlightenment in there, I believe. And so that kind of, again, that got real expansive real quick. But yeah, that takes us kind of from the square stuff into now. I didn't run in college. I had a horrible high school running experience. I had no interest in going under the thumb of some other shitty part-time coach. No one really explained to me how that could work, and no one really modeled good behavior. So obviously there was no one to look at and say, I want to be like this guy. And so it wasn't even really an option. I was too bohemian and too wronged by the system to possibly get back in on any sort of square academic whatever. So like I ran my first 50K at 18. Wow. I loved it. Like I got my ass kicked. I used to joke that I hurdled over the 5-hour mark because I went from 6-hour 50Ks, barely death marching to the finish, to like 4.5-hour, 4:15 50Ks on similar enough conditions like trails and rolling hills and mud and water crossings, like in a 1-year period, just because I got really serious about it and started stacking miles week to week to week and just taking everything seriously. And so everything, it's an overnight success. Once it happens, it just takes you a year or 5 to get there.
Yeah. You talked about the 50-mile world record. Is that something you were going for or are going for now?
I still want it. Right now, like I probably need to be 130, 132 pounds and as strong lower body as I am now, which isn't anything crazy, but that's like 50-mile weight. And maybe even on the lighter end of that for me. My body's naturally kind of mesomorphic again. Like I'm not a typical archetypal like endurance athlete type. And for world's toughest mudder, shoot, if I could weigh 145, that would be better. So like we're talking, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 kilos above my 50-mile weight. So like right now I'm somewhere right in the middle of all that. And I'm strong, I'm durable, I feel great in my body. I feel like a competent human specimen. Like if I had to fight somebody, like I'm not like cold in the grocery store, like I'm a monster right now. Like I'm a decent human. I'm a decent teammate. If we were in a tribe, we had to, there were like 10 to 150 of us. It's like you could lean on me for damn near anything right now. When I'm fast, I'm a specialized tool. I do one thing, run in a straight line, and I can do it better. So I only want to give that up transiently. And so it's fun to get back into obstacle course racing for, a 6-month, 8-month push right now and just get a little jacked and a little burly and get these peasant hands going again. And then I think as early as the fall is what I'm thinking. So maybe November in Chicago would be a good chance to take a crack at. It's tough to find a flat, fast certified 50-mile or even 100K, even the world over, that's like good weather, flat, certified. There's just only so many options. And so the 50-mile makes sense, not because I think the current record holder is a chump or I think anyone cares. It really is not that. I love running 5:45 a mile. That pace is like, it feels like my cells just vibrate at 10 miles an hour. And when I can go at that pace, it feels like, we could do all the conversions too here, but it feels like they just line up. I just love it. It's just the perfect pace where it's just hard enough that I have to be engaged, but it's just light enough that the miles kind of tick by fast. And yeah, it's just such a sweet spot for me. And to the maximum indulgence I can possibly come up with myself for is somewhere between 50 miles and 100K, because that's where that pace hits a world record. And so it's like, I know I can do that for 3-4 hours, probably, 5-10 weekends out of the year on a good day. So it's just a matter of, can I do that for 4.5 or 5 or 5.5 or 6 hours? And so that's kind of the that fits me the best. That's, again, it's just my hedonic window. It really is not, it's nothing to do with beating people or that I think it's going to further my career or expand my platform or benefit me at all, other than the subjective experience of having it. But I really think if I could spend 4.5 or 5 hours running that pace, I think it would bring me something. And I think it would be a fun, just decadent experience. And that's really all I'm after. And so I think I'll get that. Maybe the high carb and the bicarb and the super shoes and everything, maybe it'll make it totally obsolete by the time that I can get it. But I don't know. I enjoy it. So why not?
What is the 50-mile world record right now? And is that on a treadmill? Is that outside? Are there differences?
There are differences. I'm not sure what the treadmill one is. I don't think that sounds fun. Maybe you could sell me on that. I did threaten that if I could do it in a windowless box, I would do it. But I think the self-generated optic flow, to get a little nerdy with it, it's like I genuinely think that like EMDR with like the eye movements and reliving trauma and stuff is just doing what we would do if you just walked on a trail and talked with somebody that you cared about, or just some stranger human. I don't know that it even makes a difference. I think those micro shifts in your eyes as you're walking through time and space, and the adjustments to the interaction between your vestibular system and the outside world, and something that psychedelics taught me is that self-generated optic flow of the bushes right in front of you and the trees right behind them and the first layer of mountains shifting with the second layer of mountains behind you is like, if I really lean into it, I can't tell if I'm moving through that or if they're like slingshotting me to pull me through like a ether. And so it would have to be outside. That said, they used to delineate between a track versus the road versus the trail. I think the issue with that was, what about crushed gravel? Like, what about like a really smooth packed dirt? It's like, that's probably better than road because you take less abuse. So I don't think they show too much of a difference these days. I'm open to doing it on gravel. There's a race in Illinois that would be flat and fast that's certified, that the current 50-mile world record was run on. I think pavement probably fits me because I'm a little bit more durable than I am fast. Maybe a lot more durable than I am fast, depending on what the demands of the day are. And so I think pavement being a little quicker and a little more abusive is probably a better option for me. So the world seems to be relatively open as to what that is, but it really is just a matter of being free. I'm imagining wide open roads. It could be gravel or paved, and it's running 5:45 a mile. So it's like, yeah, the 50 miles a little longer than 80K. And I think the record is 4:43, 4:45. It's right in that 5:40x per mile range. Mm-hmm. And so it's odd that the plus or minus a couple minutes really makes no difference to my brain at all. I just want to run a lot of miles at that pace and I want it to feel good. And if I miss the record by 2 minutes or something, like, I don't think I would be devastated. I don't think it would hurt my feelings.
It sounds like, a lot of runners, you finish a race and you're kind of in that, you get a bit of a runner's high, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a really good run but it sounds like that pace for you is kind of like flow state. And I'm not a flow state person. I know I've had great runs where I think you're in it, you feel amazing, but it sounds like would you say that's your flow state? That's when you're in it and you're just in and in for the ride.
Yeah, I'm 100% a flow state person. I'm obsessed with like a hedonic calendar, like the idea that, yeah, you could go do ayahuasca in Peru and you will meet God, but you can't do that every single day for the rest of your life. So it's like, maybe you can sit and have 5 minutes of mindful meditation and occasionally go places with there, or occasionally zone out or zone in, however you want to look at that scenario. And so this idea of hedonic calendaring of, I can only do certain things so many times before I just, like, my adrenals will get burned out or I'll never sleep again. And so I think I'm a total flow junkie. I think that sensation of disappearing into the effort, today I had an overspeed mile. So it was, call it somewhere around 1 hour race pace, probably proper lactate threshold or a little bit faster, into 3 miles at what amounts to goal 50-mile pace. So we're looking at 1 hour race pace for a mile, and then like 4 to 5 hour race pace for 3 miles, which at altitude, like, it still kicks you in the ass. I'm still stacking miles. It's still 100+ miles this week, and coming off of an even bigger week. And I'm doing trail work in between, and I'm doing strength work in between. I did isometrics this morning, and it's compromised a little bit. I got to the end after bargaining with myself to get myself through to the end for a little bit. I got to the end and I ran 60 meters, 80 meters of the next mile before I was like, oh yeah, and then turned around. Because like I had forgotten, and it's not just that I had forgotten, I had ceased training. I wasn't out there to hit splits in the train. I was so locked into the effort. And my flowiest effort really tends to be that pace where the two aspects of your flow, your proper flow, is the challenge on one side, or on one limiting factor, and your perception of your ability. And you have to reach this Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the guy that dubbed flow, called it the flow channel. And that's the point where you're just up to snuff to hit what you perceive as a big threat. It has to be a big threat, and you have to perceive yourself as at least probably having enough to meet the threat. And then you have to have a feedback device that's telling you, am I still doing this thing? Am I getting closer to my goal? And that's what drives you or perpetuates something once you're in the flow, right? That's what keeps you going and going. And so that is probably my most flowy thing. And that is what's keeping me in this game for sure. Like I could retire. Like I have nothing left to prove. I've had a full career. I could finish my book instead of training. I could get this done, and I could coach people. And I think that would be a full life. And some point I will. And I think I'll love it. And I would like my body to be healthy but used. I keep going back to ships in harbor are safe, but it's not what ships are for. It's like I don't want to leave stones unturned. I have the rest of my life to bask in the glory or to have regrets. And right now, I don't have to do either of those things, and I won't. I'm gonna make as much hay while the sun shines right now as I possibly can, and I am not counting up anything right now. This is time to go, not to tabulate or take stock.
Squeezing everything you can out of it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Tell us about your book. I don't know that I knew that you were writing a book.
Well, you never know. It's probably half the words that will end up in the book are written, but that's the easy half, right? Like that's probably that might mean that I'm 10% of the way done. It's kind of this Venn diagram cross section of the things that have brought me into this beautiful flow state. That's why I'm like, oh, flow state. I'm a flow junkie. Like I will own that. Like it's the best. It's really what I'm doing more than I am a runner, more than I am some sort of spiritual seeker, or more than I am anything else that you could put me into easily. And it's this attempt at making a cross section between enough disparate things that you can plug in your own experience to it. So if I say I saw God, that might mean nothing to you. But if I say, here was the deep subjective experience, like you asked about the best race, probably my best race, the dragon that I'm still chasing to this day, that I would like to one up at least twice in the next year or two, now that I'm like healthy and everything's moving and I'm finding these little pockets of free energy in myself again, is my 100K champs that got my auto spot for Team USA. So it mattered, right? Like it was 100 kilometers. It was fast. We had the current 50-mile champ was me, the current 50K champ and the current 100K champ were all in the race. So it's like, okay, there's your flow channel, right? We have a big daunting challenge, like just to compete with these guys and run the time standard to hopefully get into the team would be enough. And I had some breakout day. It was freezing cold weather, miserable, which I don't like, but I've always thrived in. Like I love heat training, so I do tons of it. So I thrive in the heat too. But like my default is, especially being a little more mesomorphic, I think, loves the cold. And so I had a perfect scenario in there where it seemed like I was up to snuff with what this was going to demand out of me. And so that's positive feedback. And then the training came in of I was doing lots of like mindless work on the treadmill of just like lock on 100K pace. And I'd have all the infrared, like, my red mill, as I call it, my infrared bulbs blasting on me and cooking me like a rotisserie chicken. And I'd do a mile easy and then a mile easy at the end. I would do 6 miles, up to 6 miles, which was murder. We're at altitude. It's so hot. I'm cooking, roasting every second. And I would do 6 miles in the red mill. And I think something like locked into there of I don't have the heat. I don't have the altitude. I drop down. You got the super shoes. You're fueling a little bit, whereas I tend to underfuel, at least acutely. And everything clicked. And I had a 5-hour period or maybe a 5.5-hour period where I had zero internal dialogue. Zero. None. I would see a split and I would see the 608 or the 615 or the 620, and I would have a visceral response of, Yeah. And there was no need to nod. There was no need to appraise it. It was just, bloop, and then you lock in and gone. And there was zero internal dialogue, zero, like holding a mirror up to me. What do I look like? Who's on the side or whatever? Am I 3 hours in? Do I grab this bottle? It was 5K loops. So it was 20 of them. I didn't know what loop I was on from loop like 4 until loop 18 when somebody told me. And it like, I was gone. And so the thing that keeps me coming back, the white whale that I'm chasing, is exactly that. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is, if I take that, to get back to the book before I lose myself, if I take that and I tell you, I can take you on a cool story. You would read 20 pages of that. It's cool. Like you would listen to that audiobook while you're out on the run, and you'd get stoked, and like you'd be like, yeah, there's more out there. That's all fine. If I take that and I put it with a meditation story in the next chapter, and I felt like my backside expand, this like depth into expansiveness, and I'm imagining the Dharma center that I'm in, it's like a Buddhist church. Everyone just sits and breathes together, and how that fits in with the community and the water and the mountains, and how like I'm changing as I spend time with the mountains, and the cost of movement to move through time and space, where if I don't perceive time, then I kind of can't perceive effort. And the effort really exists only with the fourth dimension of the time factor in there. And so the interplay of all these things is like me. And to spend another 20 pages talking about that, it's like, okay, this isn't just like an elite athlete doing elite athlete things. Then I take that and I put that with like sex and psychedelics and some beautiful sunset and on the beach and the sounds and journaling, and suddenly hopefully that opens your eyes to, oh yeah, like that one time I was doing the dishes and the whole world disappeared, or I was in the shower. Water's a good one for a lot of people. I was in the shower, and the pitter patter on my skin became one with the sound, became one with the reflections or my shadow on the wall or on the shower curtain, and I was gone, and I was there, and it was all at the same time, and all of it was contradictions, and that it was perfect balance between the contradictions. And like I was listening to Icaros one time, which are these, like, they use them in ayahuasca songs, and it's these old native women, and kind of sounds, and I could feel the articulations of her mouth making these foreign sounds to me, and I could understand her holding up this one thing and saying, this and this are opposites and they're the same thing, and this are opposites and they're the same thing. And I was gone. It was like this moment of enlightenment that took me 6 months before it wasn't like, dude, you're tripping balls, right? Like you don't know what that means. That wasn't profound. You're an idiot. Like you're a junkie. It's like, what does that even mean? But over 6 months, you tell a nice, clean story, and suddenly it like sounds a little more profound than it is. By putting all these things together, it's my intention that you become the hero in your own little story here of like, oh, these are my moments. These are my gems that I've had that experience, where I experienced this beautiful nothingness or oneness or wholeness or emptiness. And you're open to take any of those things and say they're all the same thing, or say, I experience it this way, whatever. And my intention really is to arm people with this idea, because on your deathbed, it's like that one time you did LSD when you were in college or whatever, the birth of your first child, maybe like your first 100-miler or something, like the number of things that you would say, like, my whole life flashed before my eyes. Okay, what does that mean? Like, if that does happen, what are you expecting to flash before your eyes? A car crash, maybe some big, like, loud events that changed you in one way or the other. And so I don't think there's any justification for the fact that we don't teach human beings how to turn our eyes on. Like, I was in the right place at the right time. Why? like don't you have a human brain? It's not just for anxiety. Your human brain could make the right place and the right time happen all the time, right? At least 10 minutes a day, or occasionally like a 6-hour binge like I had for my 100K champs. Why not? And so this fascination is kind of my only source of conflict with the idea of like, I'm ready to have this book out, is like, who am I? I'm still living. I'm still writing the book, right? Like I'm still stacking these things, but it's adequate, and it's selfish of me to hold it in, because I could drop dead from, I don't know, heart enlargement or something crazy could go horribly wrong tomorrow. And I think I've unlocked some crazy secrets living the weird bohemian life that I have. that I think could save people a lot of struggle and misuse of their own human experience, which I hate how grandiose that sounds. Like, I don't have any sort of like messiah complex, like I'm going to save anybody from anything. But I think everybody taking anything to the nth, I think you learn little things. That's why all the experts say breath is life, jujitsu is life. It's like tennis is life. It's like, it doesn't matter what you do. If you do it to the nth, you end up finding some sort of truth with a capital T. And I think I've distilled a few things that at this point I'm just writing out for my own pleasure. And I think it's a disservice for me not to share as much of that as I can, even if some of it's so candid as to be wrong or need to be corrected at some point in the future. So that was, I don't know, 10 minutes on what I plan on having, hopefully less than 150 pages so that people can access it, worth of, I have a few working titles. I'm not going to spoil them.
Thank you for sharing that. It can be scary to, I didn't know before I brought Goodphyte to the market. I had 15 years of research, 12 years of research that I had done. But bringing it to the market and feeling the same sense of obligation to the world. Like, I can't know this information and not share it with people, but also hesitating and wondering, like, I don't know, is it going to hurt people? There's lots of studies on it. It's not like I was the first one that had ever tried it, humans. But then it turned out, and you don't know where it goes, but you listen to that guidance that says, bring this out. Like, you're hearing those, bring this to the world. You don't know where it's going to go, but that's not up to you. And so share it. And who knows what kind of healing is going to happen, right? I didn't expect to get the phone calls from people. Autoimmune disease is gone. My flares have stopped, right? Or Meredith, the person who told you about Goodphyte, she was one of the first people, and she was like in bed with her anemia was so severe. I think her ferritin was at a 4. They thought she had cancer. Like, no one could figure out what was going on with her. And I think it was a month after she started that she was like back out running and then crushing races that summer and beating course records. And I mean, she was going for infusions regularly and felt awful. So listen to that and
it's almost unbelievable.
It's not perfect.
The feedback is almost it's infomercial stuff. It's like unbelievable. It's like I hear that, I don't know, 20 times a year or 30 times a year. I mean, shoot, I go looking for that really, because like I go to trade shows and stuff. I tell me something, and I meet 100 founders that are, for all the right reasons or all the wrong reasons or somewhere in between, that are thinking they have the greatest thing, and most of it doesn't pan out. So yeah, that hopefully not so quiet voice, there's something to that for sure.
Yeah. Back to Goodphyte. Tell us how you use it in a day. And when did you start? So you were kind of doing 1 or 2 a day for a while, and then I think you and I spoke. You got another order of the OG, is the one you're taking now, I think. And are you taking 4 a day? When are you timing it? Can you tell us a bit about that, and maybe a bit about what you eat in a day and how you're timing it with Goodphyte? And then also, are you or have you used it in races yet? I'm really curious. And Alyssa and I talked about this, using it in some of her longer races. I used it in my 100K, and I think, I used it about every 10K. And I'm curious to hear if you've ever tried that in a longer effort or one of your really long runs, or if you plan to.
I definitely plan to. I haven't re-upped a Goodphyte in a run, even re-upped like fasted. I mean, the closest I could compare that, or the closest thing I've come to re-upping anything other than just taking some relatively first thing in the morning, would be when I started playing around. I just storied it this morning because it takes me to, I don't want to spam the world with my awesome ideas all the time, but when I shifted over, I said, okay, like daily coffee is probably a good thing. Let's do that more regular than I do, phytonutrients and all this stuff. How do I maximize that? What's my best option? Okay, we'll go local roasts. We'll cut down mycotoxins. We'll source with the right things. We'll source from the right countries and avoid whatever glyphosate. And so I got refined, and what I ended up with is go as blonde as you can. Like go as light roast as you can. And then guess what? That's the highest phytates you can get in a cup of coffee is those blonde roasts. So it's like, okay, now instead of just doing it first thing, now I'm doing it because I delay my caffeine after my morning routine. I get cold, I get hot, I do my whole thing. I love my morning times. It's passive training. And now I've been throwing in 1 extra of the OG with my cup of coffee. After, on a light day, on a smaller day, I'll do 2 to 3, and on a heavier day, I'll do 3 to 4. Pretty much first thing, first bit of fluid or second bit of fluid. And then as that's been like really turned my eyes onto, oh, this is performance enhancing. Now that I'm really on the Kool-Aid here and buying into the sort of more direct performance enhancement, now I'm leaning into it much more than I was before of, oh, well, how high phytates is this really? This flax is ground. So it's like, I call it FOATs, which is like faux oats, oatmeal, if you will. I love my branding. That's why I'm not disclosing like book titles and stuff. I love a good portmanteau. I love my branding. And I'll do like coconut flour and maybe a spike of almond flour and ground flax and maybe chia. And it's one of those things. Hemp is a good one. It's one of those things that I add to. I don't ever get to the bottom. I just add whatever's next. And so it's always kind of shifting and changing a little bit. But the base is always very similar of just this blast of fiber with nuts, seeds, minerals, really, really deep mineralizing stuff. Because it's it's the egg of the plant world. And it's a half dozen or more different types. And so that's just an awesome example of something that I immediately, once I was feeling direct performance enhancement from Goodphyte, I was like, okay, I have to do this with these other foods. I don't want to just be swimming in phytates outside of my morning window when I'm fasted. And so now I've gone from really just the 1 or maybe 2 in the morning fasted and just leaving it at that, thinking, well, as long as I clear them out anytime during the day, it's probably okay, because it's an enzyme, so it has to be ripping through my system so fast. So it makes sense that you would do one every 10K, because it's got to be a pretty quick, short-lived thing. But my thought was kind of, as long as I'm clearing them out at any point in my day, it's probably for the better. It's probably optimizing things. Maybe that's the 80-20 in there. And as I realized that I was getting more direct performance enhancement, that's when I started stacking it with any sort of nuts, seeds. Sometimes it's just like an insurance item. It's like, okay, well, it was a bowl of nachos that I'm really low carb Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'm crushing carbs Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then again and again. So I'm having sandbags, cold water crossings, 10 plus miles on Monday, anaerobic work, kettlebells, crawling around, pull-ups, whatever. And then Tuesday's an easy day in the mountains, but it's still in the mountains. And then Wednesday's a hard workout before I get the carbs back in. So I'm already fat adapted preseason, but then cutting into there, what I realized was, okay, there's only a little bit of like, I mean, some of these foods are like, okay, if it's a refried bean, it's like, how much phytate is even left in there once it's like fried, refried, whatever. But I'm doing this with an organ blend where there's no muscle meat involved in the meat that I'm having on this nacho plate. So now I'm like, I have to have one with that, because on the off chance that I'm getting a little bit blocking this up, it's blocking good stuff. I mean, the semi-literal cream of the cream here. And so now I'm at the point where I'm probably 6, 7, maybe 8 on a bigger day. Like a day like today, I'll be in that 7 to 8 range of the OG. It's also easier. I'm really glad to see the OG back, because that's when I first started really feeling the energy oomph, because I felt more empowered to take more of it. If there isn't iron or zinc or even the pre-probiotics in there or the MCT powder, it's like I feel more empowered to take a handful of them than I would with something that has any sort of additive, because it's still an athletic system in here, and I don't want to go blast in any sort of one thing. And so I'll take them in the morning fasted, 2 to 4, and then I will do one within my first few bites, really, like not really before or after, but alongside with any meal that has either really, really high nutrient mineral content, like organ meat, or some, because inevitably there's something with phytic acid in it, or with a meal that's particularly high in phytate. So like my FOATs is like, it's always my prime example, because it's the nuts and seeds that are providing all of the oomph and the power and the magic in there. Mm-hmm. But also it's all bound up. Like those seeds don't want to be eaten. And since they don't have fangs or horns or spines to fight you off, it's like they just have phytates in there. And so breaking that down, it's probably turning some of these things that are on paper really like superfoods. Like hemp is an incredible superfood. The fat profile is awesome. The micronutrient profile is awesome. But if 10% of that, and that trickles up to other things, if it's all bound up, that's not going to fly for me. I want to be free. I want to get all that in there. And so I do I mean, I would love to throw a few questions at you. Like, what did ancient man do for this? Was if I was seasonally loaded with phytates and seasonally like carnivore, would that be a wash? Would my gut microbiome adapt to overcome that? Or if I fermented stuff, or occasionally, like, what if 10% of my food was rotten? Would that have things breaking it down on there that would provide the enzymes to flush the rest of it in there? Like, tell me what ancient man would do. Like, we're gonna work around. Like, here's a thought that I have with so many things that I do. Like, people pay for collagen peptides, and I'm like, don't pay for collagen peptides. Take your grass-fed, responsible, bovine or whatever your preferred source, marine, whatever it is, gelatin, plain ass gelatin. It's like a quarter of the price. Mix it into cold water, add hot water, drink it. That's a pain in the ass. The people that go, I'm never going to do that. I'm saying, great. Guess what? You just found out that collagen peptides are worth it for you. You can put them into your coffee. Don't even worry about it. Boom, done. And now every day you're like, this is a good decision that I made, because you're making the decision. How elaborate would it have to be to not need Goodphyte in my life?
So every culture in the world has had a fermented food in it until recently. And, you said at the very beginning of the talk, this is the first time that we're able to unlock, like, we're all looking at peptides, we're all looking at exosomes, there's a whole bunch of new stuff coming in that we can all kind of use. I think there is so much wisdom in ancient wisdom. And if you were fermenting your food, if you were making sourdough bread or kimchi or miso or tempeh, you would be breaking down the phytic acid. So you go from having a food that is an anti-nutrient that is going to steal your nutrients, right? That is going to be almost like poison in your body, because it's binding all your minerals, it's chelating them and pulling them out of your body. So that's the way that the plant is trying to kill you from the inside, right? It can't run away from you. It's going to try to kill you differently, just a lot slower. I don't know how people knew to ferment. It's a question that I have that goes back, tens of thousands of years. People knew to do it. How did they know? How did they start it? I'm really curious about that, and I've done a lot of research on it, and biblical texts or religious texts, like, where did this come from? Because every culture knew to do it. You would have to have any of those seeds, beans, nuts, anything, basically anything other than like meat and eggs. You would be fermenting all of that in order to make enough phytase to break down all the phytic acid. And it is interesting that you're getting all the benefits you are on like just fasted, because what we're now uncovering in all the science and the scientists that are working with us on this is that I have a bar recipe that I'm going to send you that's like so much fiber, nuts, seeds, chocolate, like every single ingredient is intentionally put in there. And it's intentionally very high phytic acid, because then when you unlock it with high dose phytase, and you got to go high dose, all that phosphate's released, that's all going to go to your ATP. That's all going to be mitochondrial, all of that. Like, you need the phosphate. You can't get the phosphate. You can't use the phosphate. It can't be absorbed into your cells without phytase. So it's just this one missing enzyme.
Nice. That was one of the things I ran into, was like, when I started looking into it, that I threw at you. It's like, well, wait a minute. There's benefits of phytic acid. Like, these aren't just purely anti-nutrients. And so the idea that they're unlocked, that they would have historically been unlocked with fermentation, because there is something to that. I've run into that, of people that are like, soy is horrible for you. No, soy is a superfood. And it's like, look everywhere that consumes soy. It's fermented, and sometimes heavily fermented, to the point where like modern people can't eat it.
Right. And what has been missing, so there's lots of papers out there that say phytic acid, IP6, is anti-cancer or has benefits. But what they don't understand is that to get IP6 out of your digestive system and get it into your cell, you have to take it from your digestive system and break it all the way down to IP1 with phytase. You need the high dose phytase to do that. And then it rebuilds inside your cells outside of your digestive tract. You can't get IP6 into your cells to have all of those benefits without phytase. And that's this missing piece that we're now writing papers on and uncovering, is you still need the phytase. You can't just take high dose phytic acid and think that it's going to make its way into your cells, because all that's going to do is bind up your minerals. So you can eat the really high dose phytic acid, and so if you're eating this bar that it's flax and pumpkin seeds and almonds and oat fiber, and like all high phytic acid foods. When you pair that with phytase, it becomes like medicine for you. It releases the butyrate, it releases the phosphate, it releases all these minerals. It literally becomes medicine in your body. And so again, how did people know how to do that? I don't know, but they did. And like everybody read the book Born to Run, right? And the Tarahumara run hundreds of miles in sandals, and it's on corn beer. It's on corn beer that an old woman chewed up a bunch of corn, spit it in a vat, and then it fermented for a while, and then she gave it to these guys, and they go running for hundreds of miles, and that's what they're eating or drinking. Or beer used to be this like sour porridge thousands of years ago. That's what it was. They ate it. Everybody, the taverns were part of the hospitals, right? So they were fermenting, but it was like 0.5% alcohol. Beer was not a 6 or 8% drink, but there were massive health benefits to that. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, no, that's juicy
a
stuff.
lot of medical. I did medical anthropology and nutritional anthropology, and because all of this, I was so interested in where did this come from and how have we lost it, and myself included. Like, I was like, why would I soak my beans? Who has time for that? I'm not going to have 12 jars on my counter soaking beans and nuts and seeds and fermenting and roasting and sprouting. And everybody thinks like, who has time for that? And yeah, if you're not willing to do that, then you got to take phytase, because otherwise you're just going to destroy yourself from the inside.
Yeah, I love it. I think, can we just touch on fiber? I am running to the point where like, I don't think I'm the person to be Mr. Fiber, but somebody needs to be, because like the idea that I can just take like a Metamucil and that like multivitamin effect that I'm just like covered for fiber for the rest of the day, or that the first principle behind that is that fiber is one thing. It's this inert thing that makes you poop, and that's all there is to it. Like you mentioned butyrate. It made me realize I forgot to mention my FOATs. I sneak a little bit of gelatin in there, just because, like, why not? Because I can, because I'm, melting it. It homogenizes in there so you don't know. I do a little bit of psyllium fiber in there, and I do a bit of potato starch. So, like, 80, 90+% resistant starch. And I'm keto adapted, like, pretty profusely for most of the year. So it's like my system is already swimming in these short chain fatty acids, and then I can add something like this way diverse spectrum of multiple different types of fibers, probably dozens of types of fibers we won't identify while I'm on this planet, probably even with AI, right? Like really way more than we can just like, this is fiber. And then you talk about the resistant starch, where it's just like almost like gram per gram, like butyrate, just cranked out by your gut microbiome, and then encouraging the specific types of bacteria that are feeding off all that stuff. Fiber is probably due for its time to shine. Like you see so many things with this sports drink or this electrolyte. Like we just had one that they ended up sponsoring an event that I did, because I did an event for this wellness club that has existing sponsors. And one of their sponsors was this like trendy fiber electrolyte thing. And it just had inulin in it. And I'm like, this isn't like, you're not missing out. Any benefit you get from inulin, if your diet is already not getting that for you, you have bigger problems. So it's like, and yeah, it's just, somebody needs to be Mr. Fiber, or Mrs. Fiber, or whatever, the Emperor of Fiber somewhere in here. Because I think it's such a complicated issue, and we act like it's so simple.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I am hearing a lot more about fiber. I think, for a while it was protein, and I think fiber is really, really critical. I am hearing more about it. So I think it's happening. I don't know who Mr. Fiber is right now, or Mrs. Fiber, but
yeah,
it is getting a little bit more into the spotlight. And again, we can work with plants. We can eat all of those plant foods and seeds, but they need to be treated properly, because humans don't make the enzymes to be able to break that down. So any of the plant foods are going to try to run away from us, just like animals do. And you can work with them, and they can benefit you, or you can just eat them and think that they're going to help you, and they're not. They're going to destroy your gut. We had a lady who has really severe RA and rheumatoid arthritis, and she was in really, really severe pain and eating a very high phytic acid diet. And we added phytase, and her inflammation went down in 4 days, and she was able to like put shoes on, go for a walk, get out the door. She hadn't felt the sun on her face in 6 months. And that was 4 days on phytase. Like there isn't a medicine on the planet, but her diet then turned from being something that was hurting her into something that was helping her. And the benefits just went from there. Like we've got a separate podcast on that, but great diet, great to eat. Like it's especially helpful for anybody eating high plant food diet, unless you're a carnivore. And even then, depending on what the animal is eating, you're probably still getting some phytic acid, or you're drinking coffee and you're getting some phytic acid, right?
Yeah, interesting. I've considered that might be some of the perk with carnivore types. It's like, yeah, you're not getting any of these anti-nutrients, but yeah,
depends what the animal
definitely are. Yeah, coffees and teas are pretty ubiquitous.
Well, and there's a lady who has MS, and her A1C, even though she's carnivore and she only eats ruminants. So like she's very, very, very specific about what she eats. Lots of organ meats, like I think 1 cup of coffee a week. And her A1C, which is her blood sugar, she doesn't have diabetes, went down, I think, from like 8.9 down to I think she was in the 6s. And we're like, well, where are you getting the phytic acid? Like, where are you? What's your source of phytic acid to be able to be causing that, right? Because when you break phytic acid all the way down to inositol, then it becomes an insulin sensitizer or an insulin mimetic, right? So you're getting those benefits, but you need the phytic acid paired with the phytase. So high dose of both to work together. And that's where all of this starts to really work nicely together. So I'll send you this recipe, and I am curious to see if you just added one of those bars in, and we actually put the phytase right into the mix, and then you don't bake it because you don't want to kill the enzyme.
Yeah.
But you put it all together and you just freeze it or put it in the fridge, and you eat one of those bars. You can even just take it with a capsule, and you're getting mass dose of phytic acid and then the big dose of phytase. And I bet your performance improves even after that too. A lot of animals, they work well on fasted, and they do go systemic, but this one specifically is going to be working right on the food in your gut. So there's some tweaks that we can talk about offline.
Yeah, you're saying high dose. 1 cap isn't enough if I'm having, like, not that I'm eating that much, like with folks and stuff, but like what's a high dose for a meal, and what kind of meal would be high dose worthy versus low dose worthy? Like if I'm having carnivore-ish nachos, the only thing in there is like refried beans, and it's not, I'm heinously low carb for a few days out of the week if I'm doing something like that anyway. So it's like, I don't know, 7 grams of carb, 10 grams of carb, half of that's fiber anyway. So that's obviously like a low phytic acid thing. My coffee's on the high end of coffee, but I'm still under the impression that's fairly low. Maybe that's higher. Give me a heuristic in here. Like what's a lot, right? Like, especially as an athlete, I feel like it's easier to hit a lot. If I ate a bowl of oatmeal, like
that's high.
A lot of people, that's one of those items that's either really, really good or really, really bad. And I'm like, here's why oatmeal is the devil, because I will not stop eating it. It's like, I can eat 3 pounds of oatmeal. Yeah. Not reconstituted. I'm talking dry, like Quaker, man, like enough glyphosate to kill an elephant. Like that's the problem with it. It's not that there's anything wrong with the food. Yeah. And so what's a high phytic meal that I would eat, and what are some things that are like mild? Like what's a sneaky one other than coffee? Coffee's probably a sneaky one for most people.
So high phytic acid would be anything beans, grains, nuts, seeds, right? So, or oatmeal or pasta. Like a lot of runners are eating rice, brown pasta, oatmeal. So many people start their day with oatmeal. That would be high phytic acid, especially if you're adding in the flax seeds, you're adding in the chia, you're adding in, all of these.
The good stuff. Good stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Good if you add the phytase with it, right? Sneaky one. It probably is like, well, I mean, the beans in your nachos would still be high phytic acid, right? Doesn't matter if like cooking and sprouting and fermenting, it will break some of that phytic acid down, but not completely. So it's all still going to be intact until you high dose phytase. And there really isn't an upper limit on the phytase. Like there are lots of FDA papers and WHO papers that 90,000 or 900,000 FTUs of phytase per day is still safe for like pregnant women.
So what is that? Like what is that, like 20 pills, or is that like 50? What is
No.
that?
So your capsules are 800. So you're
Oh,
talking
shoot.
tiny.
Okay.
You take like a bottle of phytase, and it's the benefits just continue to go up as you take more and more of the phytase.
So
Right?
high dose with a meal, with a photes, or I'm imagining like a good curry with like, a dozen different types of like, chickpea and like the flowers and the,
Exactly.
I don't know, nuts that Americans wouldn't even recognize, or seeds that we wouldn't even recognize, fennel and stuff. We're talking, is 3 caps a lot, like of the OG?
Yeah, that's plenty.
Okay.
Yeah. Two with that meal would be great. If you're eating oatmeal or your oats, if you took 2 with that meal, and then 2 with one later in the afternoon, like you do your breakfast, that's oats, you do 2 at breakfast or 4 at breakfast just to get you going for the day. And then maybe your afternoon meal is, another 2. And then I often do 2 of the IB defense before bed, even if it's an empty stomach, just to make sure that everything that I ate at dinner is still going to be like working through the system, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thankfully I don't eat breakfast. I fast no calories till 1 typically, maybe ketones before 1, but that makes things easier.
You no breakfast, you don't eat till 1, but where's your run in there? Your first run?
I get up at 8. I get daylight in my face at 8:15 with a first 750 mils of water. Lately I've been doing some methylene blue in there, just photosensitizing, because it's been kind of an off and on spring right now, where it's either summer or it's winter again. And we've been doing UVB in the sauna space, so I am baking myself in red light. So it's not that I think methylene blue has done me all these great benefits. It really, I think if you're getting nootropic benefits from methylene blue, you probably have bigger holes in your game that you should address. But I've been get up, go outside, sauna, get out of the sauna. By then it's like maybe 9 o'clock, 9:15, and I will lounge and supplements for the day and drills and whatever, a little bit of strength work, and probably take off my run between 10:30 and 11 is most often. Sometimes it's a hard day or a daunting day, and I might not take off till 12 or 11:30 and be breaking my fast out on the run. With World's Toughest Mudder, it's been kind of fun because I can do like Durango food tourism and just stop somewhere and stop at a grocery store and crush. Like I had a thing of cherry juice, like not from concentrate, like a nice $9 thing of cherry juice, and slammed it as I was walking out of the store. It was 130 grams of carbohydrate. And, for someone who doesn't always like carb up, it's like, that's probably good gut training. And so, yeah, I will break my fast at 1. Like in the fall out here is my favorite, because my watch will let me know it's 1 o'clock, or my phone will let me know if it's on me. It's 1 o'clock. And at the next, or 12:59, I usually set it, so I have a minute to figure something out, and that's all it takes. I can, if I'm in the high country, I can drink water out of a stream and pluck a peach off the tree and just eat it right there. So I like breaking my fast at 1. I'm typically running 10:30 until almost 1 or about 1, and then I've measured so much stuff over the years, even when I'm fasting, like longer fasts. It doesn't seem to matter if I eat freaking sitting in bed on like in bed eating versus waiting 3 hours like I probably should, air quotes. It doesn't seem to make a difference to me. So it's more important that I have my circadian kind of like sunlight in my face at 8:15 or 8:10 and have the breaking my fast at the same time. I don't really care what it is. If it's whey protein, it's whey protein, as long as it's calories and kind of flicking the first domino.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I think that's all the questions that I have for you. Unless there was anything we didn't touch on or anything you wanted to.
No, that sounds good. I wanted to prod for a few things. I really like the ancient man frame. It sounds like you can get down on that too. I really like the how did I not need this before, and how far do I have to go to not need this now? And obviously some things it's like I could never get the amount of infrared that I get in my sauna out of the sun. I would be a raisin. There aren't enough hours of sunlight in the day, and I would have bigger problems elsewhere. And yeah, it's like there's something like that for every intervention and every supplement that we use. There is a workaround. It's just usually it's a massive problem to get that all around there. And I think that's what we ran into today. And I'm always happy to have that frame checked. But yeah.
I said something, I was at a talk last week and I said, if I could tell anybody anything, it's that you can make medicine in your kitchen, and that's literally just fermenting your food. it's, you know, it's water, it's a little tiny bit of vinegar to get the lacto fermentation process going, and then it's those plant foods. And you leave that for a few days, and you just have to be patient. And it's going to ferment, and it's going to create all this amazing medicine in your body. But for people who can't or don't want to, we put that in a pill. So,
Yep.
so you can dose really easily with phytase. But it's not going to hurt you to do any of that. If you want to start
and benefiting in the modern world to be able to do it fasted. Like I could probably just like shotgun some sauerkraut juice, like brine or something. I could probably emulate doing it fasted, but
yeah.
I don't know if even my gut might have a problem with that, but yeah.
Apparently great for a hangover. I mean, I know a lot of people don't drink anymore, but
Interesting.
Sauerkraut juice, I think, is it'll kind of knock that hangover.
That checks out. Brine is an incredible food item.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your time, Anthony. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. It was a fascinating conversation as always. I know we could probably talk for hours.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited for your next races. And it was amazing to talk to Alyssa and hear both of you, just the performance gains that you've had since you've increased the dose. We're excited to follow your journey, and let us know what else we can do to support you in this.
Definitely. I'm going to be tossing back a few of the OGs. It'll be my first time using it during anything. Maybe I'll try it in training, maybe not. It's definitely a safe thing for me. And I'm definitely going to have a few in my they call it the pit. That's your crewing area for obstacle course racing, is the pit. And that's where you go in there, and it'll just be one drop bag or one bottle really with some salt pills and a Goodphyte taped to it. And we'll only have access to that one time over what should be a 5 to 7 hour race. So 60 obstacles, 33 miles, somewhere 55K. It looked like the map just got dropped this week. The obstacles will get dropped next week. And then we get to go up to Montana and throw down.
Shove a few in your shorts too. A little plastic. Yeah.
Yeah, a little dime bag.
Yeah. Well, have a great race. And let's talk offline about tweaking the diet a little bit and where to add more phytase in your day.
Awesome. Yeah. This is we're the pioneers. Let's get into it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks very much for watching all the way to the end. If you like this content, we have 2 other recommendations. And don't forget to subscribe and like the video. And if you have some other friends and acquaintances that you think might benefit from the information, please share it with them.